All right. Good morning. Chapter 5 Diagon Alley. Harry woke early the next morning. Although he could tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes shut tight. It was a dream, he told himself firmly. I dreamed a giant called Hagrid came to tell me I was going to a school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I'll be at home in my cupboard. There was suddenly a loud tapping noise, and there's Aunt Petunia knocking on my door. Harry thought, his heart sinking, but he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, tap, tap. All right, Harry mumbled. I'm getting up. He sat up and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off of him. The hut was full of sunlight, the storm was over, Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claw on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. Don't do that. Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. Hagrid, said Harry loudly, there's an owl. Pay him, Hagrid grunted into the sofa. What? He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets. Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, peppermint humbugs, tea bags. Finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins. Give him 5 newts, said Hagrid sleepily. Newts? The little bronze ones. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out his leg so Harry could put the money into a small leather pouch tied to it. Then he flew off through the open window. If anyone out there knows how that would actually be pronounced, you can go ahead and correct me, please. Hagrid yawned loudly, sat up, and stretched. Best be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Got to get up to London and buy all your stuff for school. Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking at them. He had just thought of something that made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him had got a puncture. Hagrid? Said Hagrid, who was pulling on his huge boots. I haven't got any money, and you heard Uncle Vernon last night. He won't pay for me to go and learn magic. Don't worry about that, said Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head. Do you think your parents didn't leave you anything? But if their house was destroyed, they didn't keep their gold in the house, boy. Nah, first stop for us is Gringotts, Wizard's Bank. Have a sausage. They're not bad, cold. And I wouldn't say no to a bit of your birthday cake, neither. Wizards have banks? Just the one, Gringotts, run by goblins. Harry dropped the bit of sausage he was holding. Goblins? Yeah, so you'd be mad to try and rob it. I'll tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep safe, except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I gotta visit Gringotts anyway. For Dumbledore. Hogwarts business. Hagrid drew himself proudly. He usually gets me to do important stuff for him. Fetching you, getting things from Gringotts. Knows he can trust me, see? Got everything? Come on, then. All right, see, I would point out that we've already established that Dumbledore showed him a small act of mercy, and now Hagrid is fetching things for Dumbledore on the sly out of some very easily bought loyalty. Just pointing that out there. Harry followed Hagrid out onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom after the storm. How did you get here? Harry asked, looking around for another boat. Flew, said Hagrid. Flew? Yeah, but we'll go back in this. Not supposed to use magic nav, gotcha. They settled down in the boat, Harry still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine him flying. Seems a shame to row, though, said Hagrid, giving Harry another of his sideways looks. If I was speed things up a bit, would you mind not mentioning it at Hogwarts? Of course not, said Harry, eager to see more magic. Hagrid pulled out the pink umbrella again, tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped off toward land. All right, so I will point out that more than once already we've seen Hagrid break the rules not out of necessity, but because it's expedient. And he's relying on the discretion of an 11-year-old boy. This does not sound like mature and responsible decision making. Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts? Harry asked. Spells, enchantments, said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. They say there's dragons guarding the high security vaults. And you got to find your way. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London, see? Deep under the underground. You'd die of hunger trying to get out, even if you did manage to get your hands on somewhat. Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, The Daily Prophet. Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone while they did this, but it was very difficult. He'd never had so many questions in his life. Ministry of Magic, messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered, turning the page. There's a Ministry of Magic? Harry asked before he could stop himself. Of course, said Hagrid. They wanted Dumbledore for minister, of course, but he'd never leave Hogwarts, so old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler if there ever was one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning, asking for advice. Well, well, well. You know, sometimes people who want to be king, they don't actually become king. They find a king to sit up on the throne, and they're the people right behind. Safer that way. So when you need a sacrifice, you can throw away the king, replace him, and you're still in charge. But what does a Ministry of Magic do? Well, their main job is to keep it from the muggles that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country. Why? Why? Blimey, Harry, everyone be wanting magic solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best left alone. This implies that there is a cost, perhaps an invisible cost. At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbor wall. Hagrid folded up his newspaper, and they clambered up the stone steps onto the street. Passersby stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as anyone else, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things like parking meters and saying loudly, "See that, Harry? Things these muggles dream up, eh?" Hagrid, said Harry, panting a bit as he ran to keep up. Did you say there are dragons at Gringotts? Well, so they say, said Hagrid. Crikey, I'd like a dragon. You'd like one? Wanted one ever since I was a kid. Here we go. They had reached the station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes' time. Hagrid, who didn't understand muggle money, as he called it, gave the bills to Harry so he could buy their tickets. People stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and began knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. Still got your letter, Harry? He asked as he counted stitches. Harry took the parchment envelope out of his pocket. Good, said Hagrid. There's a list there of everything you need. Harry unfolded a second piece of paper he hadn't noticed the night before and read. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First-year students will require 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 1 plain pointed hat, black, for day wear. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragonhide or similar. 1 winter cloak, black, silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Course books, All students should have a copy of each of the following: The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1 by Miranda Goshawk, A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot, Magical Theory by Adelbert Waffling, A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration by Emeric Switch, 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Philidia Spore, Magical Drafts and Potions by Arsenius Jigger, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander, The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection by Quentin Trimble. Now, if you look at all of those names, the etymology of the words that are in the names applies to their occupation. So just to relate that back to the real world, that'd be like, oh, I'm going to hire a guy to build me a brick wall, and his name is Mason Stonecarver. Okay. But it's a little bit more subtle than that. But the names in here are very deliberately chosen. They're not just random. Other equipment: 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter, standard size 2, 1 set glass or crystal phials, 1 telescope, 1 set of brass scales. Students may also bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. Can we buy all this in London? Harry wondered aloud. If you know where to go, said Hagrid. Harry had never been to London before. Although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going, he was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in the ticket barrier on the underground and complained loudly that the seats were too small and the trains too slow. I don't know how the Muggles manage without magic, he said, as they climbed a broken-down escalator that led up to a bustling road lined with shops. Well, of course he doesn't, because he can't live without magic. That's why he's continuously breaking the rules. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowd easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. They passed bookshops and music stores, hamburger restaurants, and cinemas. I know it's only 9:30, but a hamburger would be really nice right now. Where are they? But nowhere that looked as if it could sell you a magic wand. This is just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spellbooks and broomsticks? Might this not all be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humor, he might have thought so. Yet somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help trusting him. This is it, said Hagrid, coming to a halt. The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place. It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in the corner, drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old bartender, who was quite bald and looked like a toothless walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him. The bartender reached for a glass, saying, "The usual, Hagrid?" "Can't, Tom. I'm on Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the bartender, peering at Harry. Can this be?" The Leaky Cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old bartender. "Harry Potter, what an honor." He hurried out from behind the bar, rushed toward Harry, and seized his hand, tears in eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter. Welcome back." Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The woman on the pipe was puffing on it without realizing it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and in the next moment, Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the leaky cauldron. Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter. Can't believe I'm meeting you at last. So proud, Mr. Potter. I'm just so proud. Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all of a flutter. Delighted, Mr. Potter. Just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. Daedalus Diggle. I've seen you before, said Harry, as Daedalus Diggle's top hat fell off in his excitement. You bowed to me once in a shop. He remembers, cried Daedalus Diggle, looking around at everyone. Did you hear that? He remembers me. Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more. A pale young man made his way forward very nervously. One of his eyes was twitching. Professor Quirrell, said Hagrid. Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts. Potter, stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. Can't to tell you how pleased I am to meet you. What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell? Defense against the dark arts, muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. No, not that you need it, eh, Potter? He laughed nervously. You'll be getting all your equipment, I suppose? I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself. He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It almost took 10 minutes to get away from them all. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. Must get on. Lots to buy. Come on, Harry. Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid led them through the bar and out into a small walled courtyard where there was nothing but a trash can and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. All right, so we're on page 70 on book 1, and it begins. So 2 things have already happened that I thought were pretty significant. When Hagrid brings Harry on the boat, once Hagrid's needs are met, we are moving Harry towards where he needs to go, and that's what Dumbledore wanted. So Hagrid's needs are met. He clams up into his newspaper. The boy has got a million questions, and he has been disciplined out of feeling safe with curiosity. So he doesn't feel safe to ask questions in that moment because Vernon has trained him not to, and he's got a million questions. And while Hagrid is a positive influence, Hagrid does not see Harry's need. And then, for the first time on page 70, Harry is now, he's a prop. He has been rolled out into a public setting, and all these people are gaining a feeling from Harry. They're taking from Harry. And Harry did not consent to this. He did not consent to this scene. And now he's overwhelmed, and all these people are looking for something in Harry, or they're expressing something to Harry that they need to feel heard. And they've already drained Harry. And this will not be the first time that Harry is used to appease a crowd, and nobody sees him in his pain. And Hagrid smiles. And this isn't out of malice. This is just because they don't see his pain. Told you, didn't I? Told you I was famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling. Is he always that nervous? Oh, yeah. Poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. Never been the same since. Scared of the students, scared of his own subject. Now, Where's me umbrella? I'm just saying, if it was a government agency, I think we would have to renew his background check. The man sounds like a security threat. He's probably been compromised. Vampires, hags. Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the trash can. 3 up, 2 across, he muttered. Right. Stand back, Harry. He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quavered. It wiggled. In the middle, a small hole appeared. It grew wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway large enough even for Hagrid. An archway onto a cobbled street that twisted and turned out of sight. Welcome, said Hagrid, to Diagon Alley. He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Harry looked quickly over his shoulder and saw the archway shrink instantly back into solid wall. The sun shone brightly on a stack of cauldrons outside the nearest shop. Cauldrons, all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, collapsible, said a sign hanging over them. Yeah, you'll be needing one, said Hagrid, but we got to get your money first. Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside an apothecary was shaking her head as they passed. Dragon liver, 17 sickles an ounce. They're mad. A low, soft hooting came from a dark shop with a sign saying, Ilops Owl Emporium. Tawny, Screech, Barn, Brown, and Snowy. Several boys of about Harry's age had their noses pressed against a window with broomsticks in it. Look, Harry heard one of them say, the new Nimbus 2000, fastest ever. There were shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes, and strange silver instruments Harry had never seen before. Windows stacked with barrels of bat spleens and eel's eyes, tottering piles of spell books, quills, and rolls of parchment, potion bottles, globes of the moon. Gringotts, said Hagrid. They had reached a snowy white building that towered over the other little shops. Standing beside its burnished bronze doors, wearing a uniform of scarlet and gold was, yeah, that's a goblin, said Hagrid quietly as they walked up the white stone steps toward him. The goblin was about a head shorter than Harry. He had a swarthy, clever face, a pointed beard, and Harry noticed very long fingers and feet. He bowed as they walked inside. Now they were facing a second pair of doors, silver this time, with words engraved upon them. Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there. Like I said, you'd be mad to try and rob it, said Hagrid. All right, so just a quick pin in here for a little contextualization for the non-United Kingdom readers. One of the cultural things that the English, particularly Londoners, carry is that London is an incredibly old town. And when I feel like there's parts where it gets to the really grungy and old schooly vibe, part of that is there is definitely some cultural trauma over the many great fires that London has had, where it's essentially devastated the entire city. I mean, there have been fire waves, rushing across the city in the past, destroying everything in sight, and major rebuilding. So when it points to like that lost, grubby secret history down the back streets, it's also maybe a a bit of a mourning for the past that's been erased from the landscape. Just a thought. A pair of goblins bowed them through the silver doors, and they were in a vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins